What's going on, guys? Welcome to the channel. Doing something a little different today. Not doing a commentary gameplay of NCAA. Going to be talking about the new game that's due probably in about 2 years. But this is something I want to do over time. I want to start talking about different aspects of the game. And instead of just doing a list, I want to go a little bit more in depth on each one. So today we're going to be talking about the Dynasty mode. But specifically within the Dynasty mode, we're really only going to be talking about the transfer portal and recruiting. They kind of are going to, in my opinion, be kind of like similar systems if they build it that way in the game. But, maybe take place over two different times. So let's jump into this. Obviously recruiting and transfers has changed so much, in the last 8 years. And as far as recruiting, instead of the February signing day, now most of them sign in December now. And then we do have the off season signing day in February still, but a lot of them just go in December now. So that's something that's changed there. Transfer has completely changed college football. Like, it is a completely, almost seemingly Wild West scenario at this point. Pretty crazy. What we're seeing, whether you like it or whether you don't. I think it needs to be in the game in a bigger capacity than it was. So first, let's focus on recruiting. I think recruiting could largely stay the same as far as doing it weekly throughout the year and having some recruits commit during the season, because you definitely still see that in college football today. But now a number of recruits, sign in December, as I said. So I don't see a big issue with most of the recruiting go ahead and taking place during your regular season as you're playing your games, and not so much in the off season, because you don't want to have to do too much of the recruiting in the off season because of the idea I've got later, which will be the transfer portal, obviously. I think one thing you could do, though, to kind of change up the recruiting from NCAA 14, even if you're using that as sort of a template, I think, the ability to start scouting and recruiting high school players as juniors instead of seniors. I know some guys in real life, they get scholarship offers even way earlier than this. And, 8th grade, 5th grade, some guys, it's nutty. But you could have your players increase and decrease as, time goes on. You're scouting a guy now, and then maybe he has an injury as a junior, and then maybe he has to build back up. Maybe that would be a little too complicated. Maybe some people wouldn't like that. It's like, man, I thought I was going to get this 80 overall guy, and now he's a 72. He was a gym, and then he gets hurt. Maybe it's a little too much, but definitely maybe something they could tinker with there, I feel like. In scouting, I think you could just have a way bigger part of the game, and to make that a bigger part of the recruiting process, instead of just tapping scout, and then you're done. Maybe we assign assistant coaches and to it. You're going for a quarterback. Maybe you send your quarterback coach. Well, there's not quarterback coaches at NCAA 14, you say, but that's another thing I want. I'm not going to go too in depth into this right now. That'll be another video, but I would love to see more assistants. We see them in other games where you have to hire different assistants for this. Strength and conditioning would be a really cool one to have for your team. Obviously offensive, defensive coordinator, you've got special teams, you've got linebacker coaches, you have offensive line coaches. I'm not saying we need all of those in. It might be a little bit too much to micromanage when they move around and do things like that. And, you don't want to have to be messing with that all off season all the time. But I think it's something that definitely would make the game feel a little bit more realistic, to have more coaches on your coaching staff. You send these guys out to recruit these high school players. They develop relationships with them. And that's where you kind of get a little bit of maybe a little bit more of a role-playing game type of, a heart bar, like where your relationship is building up with certain coaches. Now, obviously, that could tie into your recruiting, but this is going to be twofold, as this system can also tie in to the players you have on your team's player progression. So it's already affecting two systems there. And it's going to affect, in my opinion, how I would have it, it's going to affect the transfers, your transfer portal, and who you get and who leaves as well. If your offensive coordinator gets fired, leaves for another job, if he recruited that quarterback that's been sitting on your bench, and he's going to be in a quarterback battle possibly the next year. Maybe he follows that, that quarterback coach or that offensive coordinator to the new head coaching job that he just got, because they have that relationship there. And maybe something like these systems, like maybe you could turn these off if you didn't want to deal with some of it, or have a CPU assist. All for it if people want to get around some of those systems and make it a little bit more manageable and just want to play the games. I totally get that, but these are my own personal wishes and how I would kind of construct it. Obviously, just trying to make it as much like real life as you kind of possibly can, I guess. And like I say, the juniors, let's go back to that for a second. Recruiting juniors. These are guys, when I recruit in NCAA 14 personally, I see a guy and he's got that 81 overall. He's a gym or something. His speed is off the charts for like a middle linebacker. He's tall for a middle linebacker, something like that. I see these guys and I'm like, man, I can't wait to get these guys on the field when you start recruiting them. Now you have almost more of that suspense built up. It's like, man, I've been recruiting this guy for 2 years. I want to play as him. I want him on my team. To me, that's one of the funnest parts about playing NCAA, is getting to play with the new recruits and who's going to play as a freshman and all of that. Like, I love that part of the game and who are going to be my new players. Yes, it's sad to see the old players graduate and go, but I really love the potential of the new player and the excitement of the unknown. And I think that's what the recruiting, and so you could build more suspense in there. If you're recruiting a guy for 2 years, you can delay that satisfaction. And when you get to play as them, maybe it would be a little bit more satisfying in the end. Like, that would just be a personal thing for me. And like I said, the assistant coaches recruiting these guys, and how does that play into not only the recruiting, but also the transfer portal? And, so there's probably a lot of different ways you could do a recruiting system. I think you could definitely use NCAA 14 as a groundwork template, but you got to build from it. You definitely have to build from it. Now let's go to the transfer portal, because this is something that will have to be completely overhauled. As I'm speaking right now, there are like 2,000, legitimately 2,000 college football players in the transfer portal, which seems insane because you think, well, how many there are a lot of college teams. How many teams? I mean, it's a huge percentage of players are in this transfer portal. A huge percent if you do the math. And to me, this system should be more of the off-system recruiting system, instead of like when you're trying to finish off your recruiting in the off season, after the bowl games and such, right then, and then that's part of your off-season progression, kind of one of the first ones you do. I wouldn't mind that staying on in some capacity, but I don't want to go from recruiting and now I have to basically go and recruit again in the transfer portal, because this is something you're not going to be able to do during the season, because you'd be basically poaching players during a season trying to get them to come over. So that doesn't really work. So this has to be, the player wants to transfer. Okay, you reach out and let's transfer. And in 14, in my experience, not that many players would transfer. Maybe 1 or 2 every few seasons, in or out. Like, it wasn't much. And I think that'll be something that they'll have to change, because it's one of the biggest changes in all of the college football landscape, right now. And we don't know where it'll be in 2 years, but it's not going away. So this is where, the promise system that you had, this becomes an actual useful mechanic of the game, I think, because not only are you trying to keep potential people there with promises, but it could also be, well, if you don't keep your promises, maybe other people won't want to transfer into you. So you'll have to be very careful on what you promise. It's a risk reward type of a thing. It's like, and if you promise something, you better deliver on it. And if you don't, there are going to be repercussions. And again, if you want to turn something like this off and make it easier on yourself, I wouldn't have a problem with that, but it's something, again, I would like. Another factor could be, an assistant was hired away, because I don't want to just see recruits go, well, I don't have enough playing time, so I'm transferring. I don't want to see players do that. So what I want to see is, that will be an option. That will be one of them, but it shouldn't be the only one. We have, Henry To'o from Tennessee, the leading tackler on the team, transferring. Why? Coaches left. The coaches left. The coaches got fired. The whole staff is overhauled, and he's just one of many Tennessee players who did that. Legitimate, good players for that Tennessee team who is obviously lacking some good players, and so if the players that are good are leaving, where are they going to be? But that's a whole different story. But they don't want to deal with the coaching change. They don't want to be in a rebuilding process. It's almost like professional landscape now. You don't want, I'm at a certain point in my career. I only have 1 or 2 years of eligibility left. I don't want to waste it on a rebuilding year. I want to go somewhere where I can win something meaningful and, maybe and possibly and probably more than anything else, improve my NFL draft stock, which could be another thing that they could really kind of hone in on is, how many players do you get drafted and make that a bigger mechanic. I think it's already there built in, but how much does it really affect anything? I don't know. But that should be maybe more of a determining factor. So, coaches leaving, coaches getting fired, that's the result of people transferring. Playing time would be another one, things like that. All kinds of different reasons you could have for doing the transfers and just detailing. So it wouldn't just be, 69 overall tight ends who don't get the play. You could have some legitimate superstar players transferring to your program who, like, whoa, and then you get them right away. You don't have to wait a year. It's like signing another recruit. So how do you manage your recruiting? Do you use all 25 scholarships on high schoolers, or you save a few for the transfer portal? That'll be a decision you have to make. And, and if you have an offensive coordinator who leaves for a head coaching job, again, maybe he takes that quarterback that he has that relationship bar that we talked about earlier built up with, and that quarterback uncoupled with that isn't getting playing time, and he's going to be in a recruiting or a quarterback battle next year for the starting position. Maybe he leaves with the offensive coordinator who went for the new job and thinking he has a better chance there. So it would make it more difficult to hold on to your guys unless, how much are you playing them? Are we putting the backups in blowouts to maybe get them some playing time? Instead of trying to run the score up and run your stats up, trying to win the Heisman Trophy, what choice do you make there? Do you want to go for the Heisman, or maybe I should get the backup running back some reps so we don't leave next year? So that'll be something you have to think about. And, the system could definitely get pretty detailed. So again, if that's not what you're into and you just want to play Dynasty mode to win national championships, maybe the computer can take care of like all that stuff and just simulate it. I'm sure it would be able to do that. But I would like it to be as detailed as possible for me personally. And, I want Dynasty mode to be as close to realistic as possible. I want to know what you guys think, though. Like, what are some ideas specifically for this video? If you want to leave a comment, what do you want out of recruiting? What do you want in the transfer portal? Do you not like the system in NCAA 14? Do you just find the game mechanic itself, I guess you would say, boring or something like that? To me, I don't mind it. I think it's kind of fun searching for prospects, looking who hasn't got a scholarship offer, who's offering them, things like that. Could it be better? Could it be overhauled? Definitely. And I think it will. I don't think they're just going to carbon copy the actual recruiting method, because they've always kind of changed them over the years, if I remember anyway, when they were releasing them every year. They were always tweaking and changing some things. So they have 8 years now since the last one, and it'll be at the 10-year mark before the game actually comes out. So I want to know, what do you guys want to see, though, specifically for recruiting and transfers? We can talk about the other subjects later. I talked about the coaching thing. I'm going to go more into detail in that in another video. And we'll talk about things outside of the Dynasty, like Ultimate Team, the dirty word and things like that. And we'll get there. But just for this video, we're going to focus on that. What do you guys want to see? Like, comment, subscribe. Really appreciate it. And, obviously, if you haven't checked out the Nebraska rebuild I've got going, don't know how long that's really going to last before we go on to a new series, because I might rebuild them too fast, especially with the way I'm recruiting right now in that game. So we'll see what happens. But I will definitely continue to do series. I will definitely continue to cover the new EA college football game with news and stuff like that, and speculation videos like this, and kind of what we want. So hope you guys have a good day, and we'll see you later.